The perfect island turns out to be a deadly trap, where a single mistake could cost you your life. Richard is a young American who arrives in Bangkok seeking adventure. At first, he seems timid and unsure of himself, but he quickly begins to take bold steps. The first thing he does is try snake blood, and soon after, he experiments with illegal substances. It's during this time that he meets Françoise, a charming girl who lives next door. Richard falls for her instantly, but to his disappointment, she already has a boyfriend named Etienne. That night, Richard can't sleep because of a drunken man causing a ruckus in the hallway. Eventually, he meets a slightly crazy guy named Daffy, who shares a strange story with him about an untouched, uninhabited island somewhere in the country, known for its hidden beach of breathtaking beauty. Daffy claims it's paradise on Earth. He once lived there for years but was forced to leave. Richard is skeptical, dismissing the tale as a drunken ramble. However, the next morning, he finds an envelope taped to his door. Inside is a map showing the location of the mysterious island. When Richard rushes to Daffy's room to confront him, he finds the walls covered in blood. Daffy has taken his own life. Later, Richard and the other hotel guests are interviewed by the police, giving statements about what happened. Shortly afterward, Richard, inspired by Daffy's story, suggests to Etienne and Françoise that they try to find the island. The French couple agrees, and the three of them start planning the trip. They buy tickets, arrange their route, and set the plan in motion. The local fishermen refuse to take them to the island itself but agree to drop them off on a neighboring island the next morning. Feeling closer than ever to fulfilling their dream, the trio enjoys a fun night. During this time, Richard meets some surfers who mention they've been dreaming of the same island. Thinking it's a good idea, Richard gives them a copy of the map. The next morning, Richard, Etienne, and Françoise begin their journey and soon arrive at the neighboring island. That night, Françoise takes photos of the sky, and Richard decides to join her in the hobby. The following day, the group wraps their belongings in plastic bags to keep them dry, preparing to swim to the island. They try to estimate the distance from the shore, but eventually, they set their fears aside and dive in, determined to reach their goal. Midway through the swim, Etienne spots a shark fin in the water. Panic sets in, they're in the middle of the ocean with nowhere to hide. Richard pushes on despite the risk, but suddenly, Françoise disappears. Something drags her underwater, and only her bag floats to the surface. Richard scans the water, desperate to spot and save her, but sees nothing. Just as fear takes over, something grabs him from behind. It turns out, it's not a shark, it's Françoise, playing a prank on the guys. Sometime later, the three friends finally reach the legendary island. As they push through the dense jungle, they stumble upon a massive cannabis field, and for a moment, it truly feels like paradise. They're elated, already imagining the peaceful days they could spend in this hidden Eden. But then Richard spots a monkey. Curious, he steps closer and notices the monkey is tied to a sleeping local man. The man is armed, and clearly dangerous. Richard quickly realizes that this isn't just a field, it's part of an illegal operation run by armed Thai growers. He rushes back to warn Etienne and Françoise. Just in time, they hide as more armed men start to appear. The monkey screeches, alerting the guards, who begin to sweep the area. At one point, the monkey comes dangerously close to Richard's hiding spot, putting the entire group at risk. Thinking quickly, Richard splashes water on the animal, scaring it off and allowing the trio to slip away unnoticed. They continue through the jungle, eventually coming across a river. Hoping it will lead them to safety, they decide to follow it, until it suddenly ends in a massive waterfall. With no clear way down, a heated argument erupts between Richard and Etienne. But Françoise ends the argument with one bold move. She jumps. Realizing it's survivable, the guys follow her. They land safely and celebrate their escape, relieved to have made it through alive. Not long after, the group is discovered by a man named Kitty, part of a secret off-the-grid community living on the island. The community reacts harshly to outsiders, escorting the newcomers to Sal, their leader. During the tense conversation, Richard lies, claiming he never shared or copied the map Daffy gave him. It turns out Daffy was one of the commune's founders, but eventually lost his mind and left the island. Sal agrees to let the trio stay, burning the map to ensure no one else can find them. The Thai farmers are aware of the community's existence but allow them to live in peace, as long as no newcomers show up. While the commune isn't exactly thrilled by the idea of outsiders, Sal offers them a chance to integrate and prove themselves. Later, the islanders lead them to the secret beach that Daffy had mentioned. It's breathtaking, white sand, turquoise water, and towering cliffs that make it nearly impossible to find. The commune spends most of their days here, fishing, cooking, and relaxing in peaceful harmony. That evening, they gather to practice speaking Thai. Richard, hearing the language for the first time, picks it up surprisingly fast, impressing everyone with his quick learning. Over time, Richard, Etienne, and Françoise begin to feel that they've truly found paradise. There's no hierarchy, everyone contributes in their own way. Some fish, some cook, while others simply enjoy the serenity. But one person unsettles Richard, a quiet, enigmatic carpenter named Bugs. As Richard tries to find his place in this new society, he begins fishing and shows remarkable skill, providing the camp with a steady supply of food. His contributions help the trio adjust more quickly to their new surroundings. At the same time, Richard's feelings for Françoise continue to grow. He admires her more and more, but the others notice his growing attraction and warn him to be careful. Françoise is in a relationship with Etienne, and any interference could lead to unwanted tension. That evening, the trio undergoes an initiation ceremony, where they are marked with tattoos, 3 small marks created by heated metal. Chinese lanterns bearing their names are released into the sky, symbolizing their official acceptance into the community. Richard continues to admire Françoise, but she seems to be intentionally distancing herself from him. Kitty, noticing Richard's fixation, suggests that he forget about the French girl, but Richard can't shake her from his mind. At one point, their conversation is interrupted by a man in pain from a toothache. He asks for a dentist, but Sal reminds him that they're prohibited from bringing anyone to the island, whether friends, family, or doctors. Realizing that their friend is in desperate need of help, the community members become aggressive. They grab him and use pliers to pull out his tooth. Richard watches this in awe, realizing that life in this isolated, ideal world demands sacrifices, even if it means causing pain and suffering. That evening, as everyone drinks and enjoys themselves, Françoise invites Richard to the beach. During their walk, she confesses that she's fallen in love with him but is too afraid to tell the others. The tension between them is palpable, and they decide to go for a swim. They wade through the glowing marine microorganisms and share a passionate kiss, beginning their romantic relationship. Before returning to the camp, they agree to keep it a secret, aware of the potential consequences if anyone finds out. Despite their best efforts to keep their love hidden, word soon spreads throughout the community. Etienne is furious with Richard but promises not to stand in the way of the couple if Françoise is happier with him. As time passes, the rainy season hits the island, and the fishermen are unable to hunt. The commune situation becomes dire as their food supplies dwindle, and they're trapped on the island with no way out. With the community on the brink of starvation, Richard decides to step up, showing his courage and willingness to sacrifice himself for the greater good. He heads out into the ocean to hunt. As he swims farther out, the others notice a shark circling behind him. Panic sets in as Richard struggles to return to the shore, but he's swum too far, and the shark is getting closer. With death looming, Richard pulls out a knife and, in an intense battle, kills the shark, staring it down with determination. That evening, he regales the commune with tales of his heroic encounter, and the community showers him with applause. Not only did he survive the battle with the shark, but he also dragged it ashore, providing enough food for the group for the next few days. However, their relief is short-lived. A few days later, Sal announces that their food supplies have run out due to someone neglecting the rice bags, which have become moldy. She declares that she's going to the city to restock but needs an assistant. Bugs expresses his desire to accompany her, but Sal chooses Richard. Soon, all the commune members approach Richard, handing him a list of items they need. Bugs is last in line, and when it's his turn, he claims he doesn't need anything. However, he grabs Richard firmly between the legs and warns him to be careful with Sal, advising him not to look her way, or else he'll kill him. That evening, Richard and Sal make their way to the city, once again surrounded by people. As they move through the chaotic streets, Richard begins to see the world in a new light. He realizes that humans are capable of distorting and ruining everything around them, and he comes to believe that everything, society, the city, people themselves, is total chaos. To Richard, humans now seem like parasites, contributing nothing of value. This stark realization helps him understand Sal's reluctance to let anyone else know about the island's existence. It's not just a secret, it's a sanctuary that could be destroyed by the intrusion of the outside world. After buying the necessary supplies, Richard calls his parents to inform them he'll be staying in Thailand for a few more months, or even years. The decision is final, and the dream of escaping to paradise begins to feel more permanent. Later, Richard and Sal head to a local bar, where they unexpectedly meet a group of American surfers. During their conversation, they mention Richard's map and reveal they are planning to search for the island. This revelation angers Sal, and she becomes upset and disappointed. She doesn't believe Richard, even when he assures her that they no longer have the map and the surfers won't be able to find the island. To ensure Sal's silence, Richard ends up having sex with her. He recognizes that it's not a personal choice, but rather an order that he has no choice but to comply with, in the hopes that Françoise will never find out. Upon returning to the island, Richard distributes the supplies and gives Françoise a new camera. She's heard rumors about Sal's interest in Richard and wants to know if anything happened between them. Richard lies, claiming that his relationship with Sal is purely professional, as a leader of the commune and a member of the community. The next morning, Françoise decides to try out the camera and takes a group photo of all the commune members. They seem happy and carefree, caught up in the belief that they've found paradise on Earth. But, like all good things, paradise is fleeting. The idyllic life on the island is disrupted when 3 fishermen run into trouble. While hunting, they are attacked by a shark. One of them is killed, and another is seriously injured. The surviving fisherman drags the wounded man to shore, but despite their efforts, they can't save the injured fisherman. Following the blood trail, Richard finds Christo, who has a severe leg injury and is bleeding out. Christo urgently needs medical attention, but Sal sticks to the rules of the commune. No outsiders, no doctors, and no treatments outside of the island. Christo, terrified of the water, refuses to leave the island for treatment, but Sal remains unmoved, insisting that the rules must be followed. This decision shocks Etienne, who is the only one to show genuine sympathy for the injured man. Etienne decides to take care of Christo himself, refusing to abandon his friend. The islanders soon bury the deceased fisherman, tossing mementos and precious items into his grave, things they believe hold value. This event marks a shift in the commune's perception of their ideal paradise life. Tensions begin to rise as some members start blaming Christo for his constant cries of pain and his desperate pleas for help. The collective happiness of the commune starts to erode under the weight of this tragedy, and soon, the group decides that the best solution is to take Christo into the jungle to let him die there. Etienne, realizing the cruelty of this decision, stays with his sick friend in the jungle, showing his loyalty despite the growing corruption within the community. The others continue on with their idyllic existence, as if nothing happened, but the paradise they've worked so hard to build begins to crack. Eventually, life on the island returns to normal as the group forgets about the victims of their perfect world and goes back to their leisurely, carefree existence. That night, Richard is tormented by a nightmare. In it, he enters Duffy's room and discovers, to his shock, that the man isn't dead. Instead, Duffy attacks him, whispering that this so-called wonderland demands sacrifices. Richard wakes up in a cold sweat, heart racing, unable to shake the disturbing images. The next morning, Sal approaches him with a serious matter to discuss. She leads him into the jungle, and as the sun rises, they find themselves at the edge of the island. Sal points to a distant island where the surfers have appeared. Richard feels a heavy weight in his chest. Under the pressure, he admits that he drew the map for them, but he regrets it deeply. Sal is visibly disappointed by his lie. Her voice hardens as she orders him to watch the tourists and prevent any word of the island from reaching the Thai farmers. He is tasked with waiting for the surfers, retrieving the map, and ensuring that no one finds out about their paradise. If he fails, the consequences will be severe. Later that evening, Françoise confronts Richard. Her face is twisted with anger as she slaps him across the face, revealing that Sal had told her about their sexual encounter on the mainland. Feeling betrayed, Françoise decides to leave Richard and return to Etienne, who has been caring for Christo in the jungle. Heartbroken and ashamed, Richard isolates himself from the commune. He moves to the edge of the island, where he spends his days anxiously watching the neighboring island, hoping to spot the surfers. At first, the burden of his task weighs heavily on him, but soon Richard begins to lose touch with reality. The isolation and pressure take a toll on his mind. In his fractured state, Richard imagines himself in a video game, where each action he takes earns him bonus points. He runs around the island, fighting imaginary monsters, using a stick as if it were a gun. When he notices armed farmers nearby, he isn't afraid. Instead, he begins to provoke them, hiding among the trees and throwing stones at them. He scavenges the island for food, eating anything he can find. Completely detached from his sanity, Richard begins to have vivid hallucinations, often seeing Duffy, the deceased man, who speaks to him regularly. In one of these visions, Duffy tells Richard that in order to complete his mission, he must shoot the surfers and their friends. Richard, lost in his madness, starts preparing for what he believes is a war. He sets up traps in the jungle, creeping into the farmers' camp to steal a gun. Though he has the chance to shoot several of them, Richard refrains. Instead, he takes only a headband, as if that will somehow validate his mission. The next morning, Richard notices the surfers and their friends have managed to cross the water barrier on a small raft. He watches from a distance as they reach the shore and find a field, unaware of the nearby armed farmers. As the tourists rejoice, they are confronted by the farmers, who demand money. The situation escalates when one of the farmers, startled by a sudden movement, shoots one of the tourists. The farmers, realizing they can't leave any witnesses, execute the rest of the group. The surviving girl tries to flee, but Richard, in his insanity, scares her, prompting the farmers to shoot her in the back. Covered in the innocent blood of the victim, Richard stands in stunned silence, realizing the true horror of the situation. In that moment, he understands just how twisted and dangerous the island is. The tension rises when one of the farmers notices Richard and begins to chase him. In his frantic attempt to evade capture, Richard's mind is clouded, and he stumbles into one of the traps he set earlier. The farmer falls, injuring his leg, and Richard takes this opportunity to escape. He retreats to the commune, feeling a mix of adrenaline and terror, but the weight of his actions hangs heavy on him. That evening, Sal organizes a celebration to mark the 5th anniversary of their time on the island. The mood is festive, but for Richard, it feels hollow. When he encounters Françoise, the emotions overwhelm him. In a burst of anger, he attacks her, but quickly comes to his senses. He stops, explaining that his sanity has returned and that they are no longer safe on the island. He urges Françoise to leave with him and return home, hoping to escape the horrors they've witnessed. However, Etienne, still loyal to the community and its ideals, refuses to go, citing Christo's worsening condition. Realizing that there's no hope for the injured man, Richard asks to be left alone with Christo, where he ends his suffering, an act of mercy in a place that has lost all semblance of mercy. Richard's attempts to escape with Françoise and Etienne ultimately fail. As they try to leave, the farmers arrive at the commune, their leader holding the map that had been in the hands of the executed tourists. The unspoken agreement to keep the island a secret has been shattered. Now, the entire community is forced to make a choice: leave or face dire consequences. Sal, enraged and desperate to maintain control, blames Richard for everything, accusing him of drawing the map and revealing the island's location. In an effort to resolve the situation, the farmer leader proposes a grim deal. Sal is given a revolver with a single bullet, and she must decide whether to execute Richard. If she does, the farmers will allow the commune to stay. If not, they will all be forced to leave immediately. The community, now divided and disillusioned, watches in silence. The tension is unbearable as Sal, cold and resolute, takes the revolver and pulls the trigger. To everyone's shock, the revolver was unloaded. The crowd, stunned by Sal's willingness to carry out the act of murder, begins to question their leader. Disillusioned and betrayed, the community decides to leave the island. They leave behind the paradise that has turned into a nightmare, returning to the world they once sought to escape. Back in the United States, Richard, now adrift and disconnected from everything, visits an internet cafe. As he checks his email, a message from Françoise pops up. He opens it and sees a group photo taken on the beach, the same image that had once captured the happiness of their shared time on the island. What makes a person a threat to a utopia? Their knowledge, their questions, or just their presence? When the hero begins to think differently, they're often seen as a danger. Why does society so often reject dissent, even when it speaks the truth? Share your thoughts in the comments down below, give a thumbs up, and don't forget to subscribe. See you in the next video.